Tudor are tickle pink. Snoopy visits the dark side. Breitling's 140th birthday kicks off. Plus, all the Watches and Wonders 2024 shenanigans are getting underway. All this and more on the show today. Welcome to Scottish Watches podcast. This is a part where we tell you to check the show notes because all the pictures, the tech spec, all the details will be in there. You can find that in your podcast player, you can find that in the YouTube description, but we don't have time to talk about Dave. We have to get into things. And there's a watch that's got a pink dial, and I thought, would Dave like that or would he prefer brown?
Dave likes a bit of variety in his life, and for this moment in time, he's definitely all about the pink. I actually think this is a great looking watch, and it's been getting quite a lot of hard time, it has to be said, on the interwebs, on the Instagrams and all of those places, but I actually think they've done a great job here. Tudor doing what Tudor should do, i.e. not being Rolex, doing something a little bit different.
Is it just one pink watch, or is it two in the pink and one in...
As I say, I think this is a great looking watch. Do I like the watch per se? Bit chunky, bit big. Price is kind of okay, but I think personally I would buy one if offered one. Haven't even asked the question, but I've been very tempted to ask the question. And what is all this pink and brown dialed nonsense we're talking about? This is the new Tudor chronograph Black Bay Pink Edition. Is it limited edition? No, it is not. Have they made it clear that they're only going to make a few? Yes, probably because they're not entirely sure how well this is going to go down, but I think it will go down better than they think. Will it be more popular than, say, the PO1? I think it probably will be, but I think it falls almost into the same category, a little bit of a left field, kind of different take on things from Tudor. We've had their ambassador, that being the ever handsome football player, or ex-football player, should I say. Does he actually play football still, Ricky? Does still play, has retired, or maybe owns a team, who knows, but something to do with football. He's a good looking guy though, and maybe we'll even bump into him again at Watches and Wonders this year. Exactly the same as the standard watch, which comes in more downbeat colours, typically in the panda dial or the black dial, but in the pink I think it looks really nice with those little black sub-registers. $5,500, probably around about the £5,000 mark. Haven't even looked that far, but I like it. Movement wise, it's using a derivation of the Breitling B01 chronograph, which I believe is part of this pre-pack deal that's been done between Breitling and allowing them access to the Kinesi movements, but then allows certain other brands who are using Kinesi to get a chronograph. If that sounds complicated, it probably is more complicated than making it even sound.
I think you're wrong, but the movement stuff, I think Kinesi is Chanel, Norcane, Breitling, Tudor, and there was maybe another couple, Fortis use it and a few other people, so I think that's separate. The technology swap over was Tudor got access to something from Breitling, Breitling got access to something from Tudor, but it's so long ago, I can't remember, and that's what Google's for. That's what the show notes are for. That's why we told you at the beginning of the show to go and check it out. You can catch us telling lies.
Actually, I have already done the Googling, and on this one my understanding is it's the MT5813, which is a derivation of the Breitling B01, a heavily modified version by Tudor. I seem to have this thing in my head where part of the buy-in that Breitling did to get access to the regular movements was they kind of shared some of their chronograph technology. Because one thing they do have in-house themselves is lots of chronograph technology. Anyway, I'm no doubt someone will correct us. They'll put a comment in YouTube, they will send us an email, they'll send us a message on Instagram and tell us we're wrong, and we probably are. So let's move along anyway.
We shall move along, and we're going to talk about Breitling again right now. But we should also tell you that if you're watching us on YouTube, you're missing half the story. We put out 2 episodes a week. One definitely appears on YouTube. Sometimes both appear on YouTube, but sometimes it can take a lot bit of time for Gav to edit the videos, and that's my fault, not his. So if you want to hear interview shows with brands, movers and shakers in the industry, watch designers, watchmakers, clever people, cleverer than me and Dave, check out Spotify, check out Apple Podcasts, check out whatever Google is using. It's not Google Play. They've killed off Google Podcasts. I think they've got it in YouTube somewhere. I don't know. But anyway, whichever platform you use, whichever podcast player you use, whichever mobile phone or device you use, check us out twice a week and also follow us on Instagram. But we'll give you all that bump at the end. It's time to get some bump from Breitling, because when I was down there a couple of weeks ago, I had a look around. I got to see a few things that I wasn't allowed to disseminate. But we're allowed to disseminate as much as we like now, Dave. So hit me with it, but not in the face.
I'll just go after your upper chest area, because I know you love it there as well. Occasionally also like up your...
It's like the dartboard you used to get in Viz, where there was a picture of a face with a dartboard superimposed, and it had like the circles, and then as you got closer into the middle, you get more...
Things happened. Anyway, carrying on. Now, this is where the story will get slightly strange. A Navi timer from Breitling. Nothing unusual there, I hear you say. But a Navi timer GMT without the chronograph, which also kind of ring true, but seems to look really good. So we have a Navi timer here, deleted all the chronograph functions, and it is a GMT watch, and very handsome it is as well.
I'm sure there was a big thing at the start of our show notes that said don't say as well. Sure, I wrote that.
But that would assume that as well as what I'm not to say. I have actually read the notes, but we'll just go with that. Anyway, 41mm, making it towards the more wearable side of many of the Breitling offerings. They have, over the last few years, been coming back towards more wrist-friendly sizes from some of the larger variations they had maybe 5 to 10 years ago. That said, a multitude of colours, as you would expect from Breitling. They always bring out a huge variation of colours, from your greens to your blacks to your silvers, bit of gold, sometimes a bit of red. They're definitely not shy in bringing out lots of variations of the watch. Interestingly though, in this watch, they have not used anything from Kinesi, probably because it's a GMT module, but that said, Tudor do have a Kinesi-based GMT, so why they haven't, who knows? They are using an ETA derivation in this watch. The question as to why, I don't know, but maybe it's because of the price point. Price point in this one, just over $6,000 US, so probably putting it in the 5,000 something UK pounds, which is a pretty good price point, I have to say, in the steel case. That said, they do also offer it in rose gold, which all too often you do find Breitling doing. Maybe slightly less in the competitive price points there, coming in at around $36,000 US. There is a lot of watches that you can be choosing in and around that price point, I have to say. But as a steel version, I think it's towards the better competitive end of the market for a good quality GMT. Would you say it is with an ETA movement? Well, maybe many of the in-house movement snobs might argue with us on that one. I like this. Can't quite decide whether I really want a Navi timer without a chronograph though. Ricky, you're a guy who kind of likes some of the stuff that Breitling are doing, but I've never pulled the pin on it. Anything on this you have to say?
I'm holding out for the Emergency 3.
Are you going to be that guy?
I'm kidding on. Nobody has told me that an Emergency 3 is coming out. I did ask when I was down there. That was my big question. How many times have people pulled out the pin on the Emergency 3 and then caused the SAS to like gate crash the party they're at where they're showing off? But the watches that have been released so far, and there's a lot of them, we're only scratching the surface here again. Check our Instagram, check the show notes. Breitling is just doing what Breitling does best, and that is gate crashing watches and wonders. We had some news just a few days ago from other brands, gate crashing watches and wonders, and these guys have done it with style. Not having a chronograph on a Navi, it is a little bit weird, but it works. I like the look of it. I like the fact that they're doing different things. They're not just bringing out, they're not milking things a bit like Omega and Swatch seem to be milking things. More on that later on. But no, the watches that are out just now, the ones that are about to come, because as I say, this is the 140th anniversary year, and they ain't going to just drop something. A bit like Barbara Palumbo spent a full year celebrating her birthday. I've got a feeling Breitling are going to do the same.
And fair play to them after the bad news they had not a few weeks ago, where out of nowhere, and we'll touch on the whole watch robbery issue later, but even Switzerland's not safe. The Basel boutique of Breitling was ram-raided one evening, and they managed to put a car through the front door.
That was just Simona trying to park.
Not something you would typically hear of happening in Switzerland, but yes, let's see what becomes of that, and we will touch more on robberies and the nefarious bad people later in this episode.
I did see the pictures of that. And they came out around about the same time. This is really stupid. They came to stupid times too. One, the robbery happened when people were queuing up outside the Swatch store and kind of had a good look at it and then filmed it and stuck it on Instagram. Second, balls up, is the fact that they broke in to Breitling. They must have typed the wrong address in Google Maps. Rolex is round the corner. But anyway, enough of that shenanigans, and on to more shenanigans. Hot on the heels of British Watchmakers Day that we can't stop talking about. Apologies, it's just too good, and all the brands we're speaking to, they can't stop talking about it. Well, Katya doesn't sit still. She doesn't rest on her laurels, and she's already booked next year's event. So It's time to be nice to the boss. It's time to ask for a few days off so you can go down beforehand, get acquainted with the area, and then you can relax, enjoy the show, come back, travel on the Sunday, maybe take the Monday off. So, Dave, do you want to tell us the date for next year's show?
After all of the feedback, should the show be longer? Should the show be the same length? What should they do? They have settled again on a one-day event, which I think myself and Ricky are in full agreement with. That being Saturday, the 8th of March, 2025. This being 2024. So get that date in your diary, get that day booked off. That will be you well ahead of the curve. I'm sure you should be able to get it booked off if you act now and get yourself down, because it was an amazing event this year and will only get better. Keeping it in a day, it's going to be busy. The minute those tickets go on sale, you will need to jump, because this year they were entirely sold out. You don't want to be that guy at the door begging to get in and maybe getting a little vocal with it as well. If you want in, make sure you buy your ticket plenty in advance. And I should say, make sure you've renewed your membership or you won't be getting no ticket.
And be sure, as Dave says, to join the Alliance, because you'll get first dibs and you might get a free ticket, because this is an event, as we mentioned on the Elliot Brown episode that went out a few days back. This is an event that's put on for the people, by the people. It's not put on for profit to milk everybody that comes along. And yeah, amazing. Katia has done such a great job this year. The second year is a little bit easier, remembering what it was like when I used to run events, and the fact that she's kept it a one-day show, the same event, the same place, on the same date, pretty much same weekend, is fantastic. Because the worst thing you can do is take something that's amazing and just packed so much with information, brands, releases, great guests, and stretch out to 2 days, because the first day people will go, I'll go on the second day. The first day's a little bit dead. People that did go report and say on social media, it's crap. Then people don't turn up on the second day. So it's best having it concise, action-packed, and enjoyable. Don't drag it out to 2 films like some of the Hollywood guys like to do. And literally an hour ago, as we were preparing for this show, we got an announcement through email that Geneva Watch Days, do you like everybody's totally sticking at Rail Watches and Wonders at the moment? Geneva Watch Days have announced their dates, and they're not doing it from the Tuesday to the Friday. They're actually spanning the weekend. So if you can't get the time off work later on this year and you want to come along, I think they said there was thousands and thousands of normal people, not media, not retailers, that came along last year. This is another amazing event. This is probably one of my favourite grassroots European events, because you just get to enjoy things. It's a more sedate pace and it's spread across multiple days, and you get to bump into all these fantastic people, not just the CEOs, but legends of the watch media industry, I suppose you could say. You've got the folks from Worn and Wound coming across, you've got the guys at Time and Tide, you've even got Waco and the folks from Revolution coming across from that side of the world. It's an amazing, amazing event. You need to go along to it if you can. And we are going. I have already booked my apartment. I've already booked the flights, and the flights are ridiculously cheap. I think it was £37 to fly from Edinburgh to Switzerland, and it was £51 to come back home. You cannot beat that. Great value. Only takes a couple of hours from the UK to get across, so you could probably do it in a day.
Those dates are Thursday, August 29th through Monday, September the 2nd, 2024. Obviously, the clue is in the name. It's in Geneva. This is the 5th edition of it. They have also got quite a few new brands coming along. Some of those, but not all of them. Check out the show notes for the full list. There are Beauregard, there's Edox, there is Fortis, there is Ming, Speak Marin, among others that are coming along. They are also rejoining the 36 returning guests, which I believe brings it currently to around 51 different maisons coming along. This was started in 2020 as a bit of a, we can't really meet up because of COVID, we can't do the big shows like Watches and Wonders. It was kind of a bit of an infill, but it was started originally by Breitling, Bulgari, De Bethune, Girard Perregaux, Moser and MB&F. Those guys obviously still stalwarts of this show in there, still attending, still kind of really bringing the life to the show. But great show. I think there was over 8,000 visitors last year, 600 different media representatives, which included the 2 ugly mugs you're watching now, and 300 retailers also joining the party as well. So other than that, get yourself along.
This will be my 3rd trip to Geneva Watch Days, and they just get better and better. I stay literally 1 street away from Beau Rivage, Fairmont, and all the different places down at the actual lakefront. It was super cheap. I think it was about 100 quid a night for the hotel, and it's a studio. It's not even like a hotel room. You've got the bathroom, the kitchen, the main area, and I used that just as a little bit of a place to kit out, set things up, charge the batteries, get everything ready, plan next day, and then catch up with things later on. And even at night time, I would finish up at the show, wander back, have a bath. Yes, I do that occasionally, and then go to the nighttime event back down at the Marquee. And all these brands that go, it's so laid back. It's in hotel rooms, it's not conferences. And you've got things in the main marquee tent as well. So you can actually have talks from people, you've got collector communications. There was a watch auction with Ariel Bax, I think his name is, the guy that sold the expensive Paul Newman Daytona for such an incredible amount of money a number of years ago. He was there doing a charity auction that was legit. So it's fantastic. You need to go along, and it's super, super cheap to get there. It is, I don't think there's actually a cost to go to the event itself because the brands pay for that. So yeah, another one to put in the diary, another one to check out, especially if you've not managed to get any tickets for the public days of Watches and Wonders. And speaking of leaving home, there has been a spate of burglaries, robberies, and home invasions over the last few months, not in London for a change, but pretty much across the UK. And the ones that we've heard about most prominently are the ones in Scotland on our doorstep. A couple of months back in January, there was a gentleman in Airdrie who had a brick come through his window. When he looked to see what was happening there, his front door was kicked in, and balaclavaed men entered with machetes, held him and his family up, held a blade against the throat of a young one, and demanded that he empty his safe and give them watches, which is just, it's like out of a movie. And then there was a report of somebody else just a few weeks ago that their house got burglarised. People went in, people took stuff, and then the most recent one was a gentleman on Instagram whose post was shared far and wide, out with Scotland, out with the UK, and I actually spoke to him on the phone about what happened. And again, what went down was he left his home, his wife left the home, and then 3 masked balaclavaed men entered his home and got a hold of his safe, threw it down the stairs, and then made off with it. The police were called because a neighbour reported it instantly, but obviously it takes a while for the police to get there, and they were off. So he has actually posted the serial numbers of the watches that were stolen. He doesn't care about 99% of them, but there was one that was gifted by a member of his family, and the emotional attachment to that one, it totally outweighs the rest of them. But this is just a growing thing, and we've said it since day one in the podcast. Especially if you're out and about, if you're walking around wearing an expensive watch, it's the equivalent of having £5,000 sellotaped to your wrist. If you've got a watch collection and you've got them in your home and that they're in a safe or they're hidden away or whatever, again, that could be £20,000 worth of cash, the equivalency, just sitting in your house, which you wouldn't normally do. So getting a safe is a good idea, but getting a safe that's actually bolted securely to a fixture, a fitment, or the ground is probably a better idea. And the thing that I do is I keep nothing in the house, nothing of value whatsoever. I was born in Glasgow. I know what it's like. So I've got a safe deposit box in Glasgow City Centre. Dave has been there. Dave frog-marched me there recently. And before we go to Dubai, before we go to Geneva Watch Days or Watches and Wonders, or in fact anything at all, we make sure that we do not leave anything of substance or value in the house. I take the laptop with me. I take the cameras with me. All the watches, anything of significance goes to the safe deposit box. And I'll tell you why. One is just what we've spoken about. If somebody comes through your front door and they hold a knife against you and say, empty the safe, you're going to empty the safe. If you don't have a safe, you can't empty the safe. That's the difference. And the other thing is, if you get home contents insurance, it doesn't cover anything. If you get specialised insurance, say from TM March or somebody like that, it's going to cost you a pretty penny. And they're going to demand a massive premium. They're going to have an excess. They're going to demand, do you have a safe fitted properly? You've got the cost of the safe and the fitting. And then if something happens, you make a claim. So you're looking at, I think I was quoted about £5,000 a couple of years ago when I had a small collection. Plus, I had to spend £1,000 in a safe and about £800 fitting. And I thought, sod that, I'll look into safety deposit boxes. Found a place in Glasgow, did my research. They've got places all across the UK. Actually met up with the guy that owns the company. And since then, I've been using their services. And the benefit for me is it's like going to a sweetie shop or going to pick up a new piece. It's a little bit James Bond. It's a little bit Mission Impossible. Dropping down, going through, iris scanning, code checking, fingerprint, key codes, all that stuff to get in. and then pick a watch up. So it's a little bit of a treasure hunt going to find these things. So that's kind of how things are. I've also spoken to a friend in the police who is a member of Red Bar, and I've also spoken to one of the gentlemen that was on the show before that we met down at Watchmakers Day, and they're both going to come on and actually tell us more about what's happening.
It's a sad state of affairs, isn't it, when you have to be extremely wary about anything of any value. The phrase, "this is why we can't have anything nice," comes to mind, but sadly, with a lot of things that are going on in the world, whether that be in the UK or other places, cost of living, crime does seem to be on the rise, and home burglaries, after a fair period of it not being an everyday occurrence, seems to be back on the rise. So as you mentioned, Ricky, taking precautions, whilst you shouldn't have to, but taking precautions to be safe is probably the braver thing to do. For example, as you mentioned, if you're going to keep them in the house, make sure they are somewhere that it can't be just dragged out the house if they burglarise your house when you're not in. But better than that, just get them out the house and make a lot of noise about making sure everyone knows you don't keep anything of value in the house. Have a safety deposit box, have a secure location that you can keep these in, and ultimately, do not share where that is with anybody. You keep that to yourself, only your nearest and dearest will know where exactly that is.
One of the things the police said to me was, as Dave mentioned there, don't announce what's happening. That means don't announce when you're going to the airport, don't announce when you're on holiday, and don't announce your watch collection, because those things can tie together and it just is going to be a recipe for disaster. I don't have any watch content on my personal Instagram. I hardly ever use my personal Instagram or social media, and all the watches that me and Dave get in, they never stay at home. They go to a storage location or a safety deposit box. It's the easiest way to do things, keeps everybody right, and as I said, you wouldn't have 10 grand sitting on your kitchen table. You wouldn't have 50 grand or 100 grand or however much your watch collection costs just sitting there, because that sounds stupid, but that is the equivalent of watches, because people can easily flip them. A 10 grand watch can easily be turned to 5k instantaneously. So yeah, have a think about it. We'll have the guys from the police back on sooner rather than later, and just be a little bit cautious, especially coming up for summer, as you start to go out more, as the lighter nights are coming in and it's a bit warmer, and you might not have your watch covered up quite as much. But from there, Dave, we should probably talk about some nice things.
What would this be? A large entity within the watch world trying to show up everybody that may or may not be going to Watches and Wonders. Again, only 1 week ago, Swatch did what we probably expected them to do and try and bring out another MoonSwatch to try and get in and ahead of Watches and Wonders, like they did a mere couple of years ago when they launched the original set of the MoonSwatches. They brought out and they announced the Snoopy edition in all white. A very good looking watch it is too. Even Mr. Barker, who's not been the biggest fan of the MoonSwatches, is rather taken by the white Snoopy edition. An all black MoonSwatch is going to be making the landings very shortly. Will it come out just before Watches and Wonders? I think from a PR coup, that's probably what they'll do. Will they wait till the next moon cycle? I think they'll probably push it a bit quicker than that, but who knows? This is Swatch and Omega. Who knows what they're up to? But yes, if you don't like the white and you want a black, which is definitely going to stay black, unlike the white one, which I'm still not convinced is going to stay white, but time will tell. If you don't like white, you can get the black one. So the choice is yours. So that's the news as far as we know it so far on that one.
I would buy an all black one and then contrast and compare it to my Apollo 8 to see what it would be like. And Adrian quite liking the Moonphase Snoopy. Did he not make some comments about the pusher pinging off in his last MoonSwatch?
Well, he did. He was a little bit not enamoured by them, shall we say. But he did a little video as he was wandering through the absolute metropolis that is Glasgow International Airport a mere few days ago, saying, I know you all say that you don't think I like these, but I can't help but kind of like this one, and I want one. So it would appear that he does want the white one, and it would appear he's fallen for the hype as well. But you know, it's Adrian. Give it a week, he'll probably hate it.
This is very true. And we always forget things ourselves. We forget to do wrist checks, and Dave likes to come second, but he's going to come first this time, because I'm not going to tell you what I've got in the wrist. I'm going to let somebody else tell you shortly what I have in the wrist. So Dave, Reveal all.
Dave is wearing his Oris Holstein Edition World Timer 2022. Possibly one of the smallest watches I have in my collection. I believe this is around 36 millimeters. Can't remember if it's 36, 36 and a half, but it's in and around that size. Have to say, looks truly awful on the supplied bracelet. Not that the bracelet's not decent quality, it is. It just completely and utterly overpowers and overweights the watch. Big, chunky stainless steel bracelet. So I have it on a Ricky Special, known as an eBay Tropic Blue strap, which was acquired for a mere couple of pounds, which does suit this watch rather well, I have to say, and kind of transforms it into what I think it should look like in the first place. A vintage style ETA movement, which has the world timer. So you have these buttons that allow you to advance or put back the hour in terms of the world time, which is going on here. You can see that in the little second dial, the second time area in this dial here. You have the date, and I just think it's a great looking watch. One of the best releases that Oris have done in many a year. I have to say though, it is very small and that does put many people off. I think in fact though, it is already sold out because the Oris editions for Holstein are limited. So even if you don't like it, doesn't really matter because you can't get one anyway.
So that's time of the show where we bring on somebody that knows a lot more about watches than me and Dave, or me and Dave combined. Yeah, it's a me and Dave sandwich. But yeah, we have got somebody here to tell us all about what I'm wearing on the wrist today, and that is Pietro from Limited Edition, doing his monthly visit ahead of Watches and Wonders, where we're going to catch up with him in real life. It's so strange. He doesn't stay that far away, literally across the English border and down south just a little bit. But we catch up with him in Dubai, we catch up with him in Geneva, we catch up with him across the world instead of on home turf. He's here today to talk about a British watch from a British brand that you may have heard of, but you're definitely going to hear a lot more of. I wore this watch, probably shouldn't have, didn't ask permission, but I wore this watch out and about because I thought it's sunny in Scotland, I want to see what this dial looks like. I put it in our Instagram, and what a reaction it had. Of course, I'm speaking about a watch that's blue because it's my favourite colour. It's the colour of the Saltire. It's the colour of Scotland. It's the colour of my car. And this is a fantastic looking watch that to me, when I saw the price tag, it didn't quite equate. Not because it was too expensive, but because it was far too bloody cheap. So Pietro, from the limited edition, it has been a month since you were last on. Tell us how you're doing and tell us about this amazing timepiece.
Nice to see you, Ricky. Thank you very much for the nice introduction and for the introduction, most importantly, to Garrick's work. When it comes to British watchmaking, Garrick is one of those makers we've been particularly attached to for over the last 5 to 6 years when we discovered them. These guys are actually making their own movements, their own dials here in the UK after a long period of research and then development that started with Andrea Streller at the beginning, giving them a little bit of a brief and a help to set up, their own production premises, and in particular the use of the movements and the manufacturing of the movements. But now these days, Garrick actually relies on their own ability to produce basically everything in-house. Now, this is the S4 collection that you're here, which is the entry price for Garrick at pretty much £7,000. You get something that is, from the point of view of the dial and the watch itself, definitely made in the UK. From the point of view of the movement, is obviously a modification of a Unitas movement that is quite enticing and quite compelling, because as you can see, it shows all the how can I say, the signature decorations, finishing and layouts of the classic English watchmaking, including engraving, including the frosting of that plate, 3/4 plate that you see there at the back, the enlarged balance wheel as well, that is typical of the Unitas, of course. So yeah, I fell in love a long time ago. We are still very much in love with what we see at Garrick, and we immense credit for going the hard way of trying to internalize as much as they could in terms of craftsmanship and in terms of engineering and mechanics as well.
Well, I like the way that you know the script and you got into it straight away. None of the fiffle faffle. I asked how you were doing, you ignored me. You just started talking about the watch because it's so bloody cool. And I'm in love. I'm absolutely in love with this. Simona saw this coming out of the box. And can I just say, when you buy a watch from the limited edition or you're sent a press piece from the limited edition, it comes in a Fort Knox packaging. It took about 10 minutes to actually get through all the packaging, all the stuff, all the polystyrene, all the bits and bobs. It wasn't actually polystyrene, I'm wrong. It's recyclable paper. Getting past it all to actually get into the timepiece is a feat in itself, and it just builds the anticipation. And when this was uncovered, because I don't know what Pietro's going to send me ahead of time, it is in Aladdin's cave, it's a treasure hunt. Nobody has a clue what's going on. It's like an advent calendar. And this appeared, and I thought, this is amazing. Very next day in Scotland, the sun came out. It was meant to be, it was written in the stars, and I absolutely love this. And the people that have commented on it so far have said things like, are you sure that's a prize? Are you sure there's not a zero missing or a one at the start? It's phenomenal. And this is a brand that I've heard of before. Nicholas at Fears Watches has obviously done collaborations in the past with the folks at Garrick. I have briefly chatted with them once or twice on Instagram in the past, but this has made me kind of buck my ideas up, and I think I'm going to reach out to the guys and see if they've been interested in maybe having a chat, potentially coming on the podcast, because this is just insane. Can you fill us in a little bit on the background before I get a chance to email them?
Yes, so David Brailsford is the owner, together with Simon, who's the watchmaker. They set up and they started this adventure now over a decade ago, and as I said, they went the hard way. It's no surprise that setting up a true manufacturing venture in the UK, in England, is particularly difficult. We all followed, the different facts and the different ways, and several brands tried to be able to obviously define themselves as British watchmakers. Is something that it's incredibly difficult on the back of a tradition that saw England being the cradle of watchmaking even before Switzerland. For those that are not familiar with the history of watchmaking in Germany, and especially in England, they really were the center of watchmaking over the 16th, 17th, 18th century, until when watchmaking completely disappeared from England. And it took obviously the brilliant George Daniels to bring back the idea that yes, you could and you should, in his view, try to manufacture everything from scratch, as the good old English tradition would dictate back in the day. So Simon and David embraced this crazy idea of trying to do something genuinely here in the UK from scratch. They had some help, as I said before, from Andrea Strella, a side company that was specialized in developing mechanical calibers, and they had the first how can I say, imprint from Andreas, and a lot of help from him at the beginning, until when they became completely independent, and they managed to kind of, on the back of that, develop their own calibers, first as in this case with the S4, with a reinterpretation of Unitas movements, heavily modified, as you can see, and also heavily redecorated and refinished. But now also by developing their own calibers. If you go on the limited edition and you kind of research a little bit on the listing that you find online, you'll see that this S4 is the entry price, so on a modified Unitas. But then when you go to the core of the Garrick collection, you find in-house movements that are absolutely, some of them, they really blow me away. And they play with the typical codes of English watchmaking, like the deadbeat, for example, the regulator, and enlarged balance wheels. And then from the finishing side, you can see a lot of guilloche, a lot of engraving with hand painting within the engraving. Then you'll see the frosting, which is the signature of English watchmaking in so many ways. So they only produce, Ricky, believe it or not, less than 100 pieces a year. So still a true craftsman and a true artisan production. And they're really doing great. And I share your appreciation for them 100%.
It's Phenomenal. The stuff that you send us across, and the price points can vary from, I think the most inexpensive was maybe 1,500, right the way up to, I mean, the stratosphere. It goes as high as your pockets will dictate. This is lovely. I'm going to really fight you to get this one back in the post. It might hang around for a little bit longer because I've got other cameras that want to do the damage with it.
Yeah, you get me in a very interesting moment. I've just been to Geneva to kind of have a flavor of what's happening pre-Watches and Wonders. I've been to visit Ludovic Balois, who's just opened his second workshop. He has a workshop now for the construction of the movement and the watches, and a workshop now for the making of the dials as well. And this was a surprise because, as Ludovic does, it keeps things quite low profile. So I went there, had a great time, and I've seen a couple of pieces that are going to come out from this master watchmaker that is also a master of life lessons in a way. For those that want to go and study the biography of Ludovic Balois, his story is compelling, and I am proud to be able to call him a friend and to follow his development. So Ludovic Balois at the AHCI, which is an exhibition I would definitely recommend you to go and visit, at the Iceberg, which is in Place de Berg. It's an art gallery that the Academy of Independent Watchmakers have made their own headquarters for the Watches and Wonders exhibition. So if you go there, you'll see a few legendary names such as Sven Andersen, Ludovic Balois, Vianney Alter, Raoul Pages, who's just won the Louis Vuitton independent prize, and many more, Bernard Lederer, Kudoke, just to name a few. But start from Ludovic because I've seen a couple of incredible things, and I know he's also working on some developments for the future years. At the Beau Rivage, there will be the array of very interesting contemporary brands, because I always distinguish the solo watchmakers with the independent brands. It's a kind of a different concept, if you like, but equally creative and equally inspiring in many ways. You may want to go and see HYT. I think from HYT there will be a big change coming up. So for many years, a lot of collectors have pointed out that HYT needed to kind of streamline a little bit their collections and maybe try to repropose the incredible way they have to watchmaking in a smaller size. And I think, I've not seen anything, but I think that's the direction it's going to go for HYT. So I'll go and have a look. Same with Trilob or Trilob. Trilob, they are moving all their production now to Paris, which is something that is really interesting, because also they want, like Garrick is fully and totally British made. They want to be Paris made, to stick to their roots and to their background. So something really interesting there.
And if people want to check out more about this lovely timepiece, the different brands that you've mentioned there, and the new stuff happening on the limited edition, where should we point them to?
They can have a look at our Instagram feed, which is thelimitededition.uk, or our YouTube channel that is thank God, doing really, really well. We are nearly 45,000 subscribers, and I want to thank publicly everyone that takes the time to actually, deal with us and cope with our very intense sometimes content. But we are passionate about sharing what the independents stand for and what the real stories are. There is a website that is thelimitededition.co.uk where you can find the independent watchmaking classified and curated in a certain way, and separated between pieces that are actually in stock and pieces that are actually, we tell the story and we give the possibility to pre-order.
Always a pleasure, Pietro. Let's catch up in a different country in a couple of weeks' time, and you can give me more of an insight into the things that are probably embargoed at this moment that you know all about that you're not allowed to tell me or the listeners. But it's always a pleasure, and we'll catch you again soon.
Let's do it. Thank you very much, Ricky, and enjoy Watches and Wonders, and let's see if we can meet up over there.
Indeed, Garrick, a very handsome looking watch, very traditional watches in many respects. They very much focus on the dial. That said, they're also good with their movement finishing, but a bit like Anardane, who specialise in Grand Fou and Fume style enamel dials, these guys very much go for engine turning, rose kind of finished, hand finished, kind of guilloche style dials, much more in that traditional watchmaking area. This one's the S4. I really like this. Not my thing, but I can really appreciate them from a point of view of having a look at them and the kind of craftsmanship and work that goes into these watches.
And to find out more about this timepiece, check out the show notes and obviously the limited edition website, Instagram, and YouTube channel. And something else you should check online, which will be linked in the show notes, is a mailing list. It's a newsletter from the guys at Esquire. Johnny there's been doing some great things over the last little while, and you should definitely sign up for this free newsletter that is barren of advertising and junk, but very heavy on good watch content. And along with Barbara Palumbo, the guy that runs Hodinkee, and a whole load of other folks, I ended up being included in Rolex predictions for Watches and Wonders 2024, where I was ever so slightly misquoted at the end about the Coke. I made a little quip, a little joke that maybe was not good enough for publishing, and it leads us on to what we have been up to. It's been a whirlwind Watches and Wonders prep week, I think. Lots of things have arrived, but I'm going to let Dave take the floor with this one because he's bought some things, and Dave buys a lot of things, and he promises a lot of things, and he says he's going to take some cameras to places and use things, and then Miziel doesn't get any pictures. Miziel doesn't get any Instagram reels. Is it going to be a difference this year, or are we going to get more of the same, Dave?
Yes, Miziel, we may produce some content.
Are you? Are you, Dave? Are you going to produce content?
Am I? I'm going to go with possibly. That's probably as definitive an answer as you'll get. But I have been preparing. I have a camera. Ricky isn't believing that this beautiful utility may just stay at home. In fact, can I be bothered carrying it around? Probably not. Therefore, his little bullshit magnet probably will ring true. Outside of that, Ricky, what have you got to say before we finish?
Follow us at Scottish Watches on Instagram because we're going to be uploading stuff next week. Subscribe to us on YouTube. That's where the videos are going to appear. Be sure to check out the website. That's where the articles and the previews are going to appear. Drop us an email, info@scottishwatches.co.uk. I think I got all that in, Dave. I think I got it all in. So thank you for watching, thank you for listening, and we'll catch you guys again soon.